Hello there,
Howdy.
and welcome to the Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean,
And I'm Josh, back.
back from the operation table.
Yeah.
They played Operation on us.
That was like the fastest 2-day vacation I've ever had. It was insane.
Welcome to the Rebel Files. This is your one-stop shop for everything Star Wars, movies, books, TV shows.
Cheap dime store tattoos.
No, toys, comics, everything Star Wars, and wild speculation, which we will get into somewhat tonight because we as a duo, Josh and I, have never haven't had the chance to sit down and talk about Celebration and everything that came out because somebody had to get his belly opened up. And
Yeah, I think the extent of our conversation happened during Celebration while I was texting you from the
hospital bed.
Semi-coherently excited and drugged out all at the same time. So I don't remember half of what we discussed, except for like little intervals.
Yeah, we can go back and read the text, but that's a long ways.
Oh, that'll be funny.
For those of you on the podcast feed, we're both podcast feed and YouTube feed tonight. We would like to ask you to subscribe, rate us, follow us, all that kind of jazz. But if this is the first time on the Pop Culture Cult feed that we've actually done Rebel Files, so hence the whole, wild speculation about Star Wars and talking about all the fun stuff. And so,
I you know me, I love speculation.
Yes. And those who haven't listened to us on the podcast feed, I'm much more of the new canon stuff. Josh is much more of the legend stuff. So between the two of us, we seem to meld pretty good with.
It's a happy medium in there.
Yeah. I think it works out pretty well. For the most part, sometimes he says something and I'm like, well, that sounds like English.
I can't help it. I was a dork, That's what I had to cling to in my youth.
Right.
Wasn't cool, man.
We're clinging on to it as adults. So let's get into we're going to talk about Celebration as a whole, but you have to talk about the Rise of Skywalker trailer. Now the panel itself was cool. But it was a typical panel. Nothing big came out of it. Although I kept waiting for Anthony Daniels and Billy D. Williams to say something.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised nothing happened with that.
Yeah.
I felt like there was all that build up with Anthony Daniels and his Twitter feed. Then we got to Celebration. It was kind of like, what?
Well, I think that was all about his book that's coming.
It's probably true.
But it was still like I kept waiting for one of them to say something, and Kathleen and JJ both kind of kept looking like over side-eye, like, are you gonna say something?
Oh, they were policing everybody in that panel.
Yeah. And we got introductions of the cast and the new character who's played by Naomi, I cannot remember her name, and they leaned right into the conversation as she Lando's daughter, and so didn't say no. Pretty much left
it at. Let's just say Lando got around the galaxy.
Yeah, but she's dressed very similarly as Han. So, but let's talk about the trailer itself. Mm-hmm. I've done a breakdown with Janice. I did a trailer reaction. Let's hear what you have to say, and we'll.
I think it's misleading. I really do. I think they are purposely misleading us to a certain degree. That being stated, so there's a lot of analysis of the trailer, and you can get really, really in-depth into the speculative side. The problem that I had with the trailer, and really the only problem I had with the trailer, was that it is freaking formulaic. And you can look at the Force Awakens, The Last Jedi.
Yeah, Janice and I
Why
talked
does
about
everything have to open up with somebody breathing heavy? That's literally how they've all opened up. Somebody is sitting there breathing heavy. And, okay, it's their vibe. It separates kind of from what the prequels were and everything else. It puts it in line. Now, the opening scene with Rey, not shocking. Usually she's the big kind of, protagonist, that type of stuff.
Right.
What I got more into was the fact that you're going to have that epic space battle. You got a little bit of a hint of that. But that whole final sequence with the Death Star component, because you start wondering what planet is it? Is it Yavin? Is it one of the Endor moons? Is it like Yavin 3? It's I like it. I'm excited for it. It did hype me up for it.
Right.
And like any good, Star Wars nerd out there, I did start kind of going down the speculation path, partially because I was under narcotics at the time, which makes it interesting. But you do have that. You start wondering. I still feel that Abrams is really kind of taking that Disney Kool-Aid, and I think a lot of what we might be seeing in that trailer, save maybe 1 or 2 parts, are going to happen probably within like 20 minutes.
I think they're going to use the Marvel model of showing like maybe the first half an hour. They've already said that this is going to be probably a hour and 45 minute to 3 hour movie because they're wrapping up so much of the wrapping up the Star Wars, the Skywalker saga. They said it on the panel. Kathleen Kennedy, JJ, every time they got interviewed was talking about it. The cast all talked about how this is the end of the saga. So you're going to have a big movie. And a lot of what they showed seemed like Indiana Jones quest for stuff kind of thing.
Yeah, it's, it puts all of them together.
Outside of that first Rey.
Which I don't necessarily think is Kylo. Flying the TIE fighter.
It's Kylo.
I'm not sure.
It's Kylo.
Here's the thing. If that's the TIE echelon, it doesn't seem like the TIE echelon, because what's funny is what they originally described as a TIE echelon was more like Kylo's TIE fighter in Last Jedi.
Right.
But this one's really just a TIE interceptor. That's really all it is. It's like, Squadron from Battlefront 2. I'm forgetting.
Inferno Squadron.
Inferno Squadron. So if you look at it, it's almost like an Inferno Squadron stylized TIE interceptor. And I don't know if that's the echelon. It's a little longer. It's a little heavier arm, so it could be the echelon. Cool TIE fighter.
Right.
I want it.
Right.
But that little sequence that they showed of just the gloves.
Right.
Now, if it's Kylo and people anticipated Kylo, show Kylo. But you're not getting into the depths of it, so I'm wondering again if it's like, oh, it's Kylo and Rey doing the same thing. Maybe not, because all you see is gloves.
Yeah,
that's it. So it could be anything.
I've heard that speculation from jump. I've thought it's been Kylo. I've thought that was the last big fight between Rey and Kylo. That's really what I thought that scene was coming from. But they're on what I'm assuming is Jakku,
right? With
Poe and Finn and C-3PO in the other shot, where they're on that skiff and they're getting chased by the stormtroopers with rocket packs.
Yeah, the jump troopers.
Which I'm so super excited that they're doing that.
Right,
but they also they kind of got lost in the trailer, and then I was the third time I'd watched the trailer, and I'd already watched one breakdown where they pointed it out. I'm like, oh, that was a nice pull. And
yeah, and I mean, I got really more into the dialogue that was being stated versus that, because there's the Luke over there, because there's a lot of speculation that was because they are bringing in some of those old Star Wars canon elements into this.
Right.
You're seeing some of those kind of appear because you're seeing the jump troopers, which are legends troopers. But Luke says you have 1,000 generations in you. So there's a lot of folks who've been speculating going into the movie that how Rey keeps a lot of her Force power and how she becomes powerful is they utilize that Force essence. Like, they actually put it into her.
Right.
So there's a lot of theories around that and a lot of discussion about Luke coming back and even Leia herself potentially putting their Force essence into Rey. Or the ghost coming back, and talking. And that's, you get down to the point, and it's like, you've got 1,000 generations of us in you. Does he mean literally in you? Or did she spend over that 2 years reading all the books?
Right.
So there's a lot of things in there that
it could be a little bit of both.
It could be. We know Palpatine's in play, and that was always one of his things, which is kind of like the Jakku thing, because there's the temple and everything else. Right. So it does tend to lean that way.
Right.
But I'm almost kind of wondering what he's got up his sleeve.
Well, that's why I think the Death Star piece is actually Endor. Now, they say the Force Moon at Endor, and this is one of the things that was pointed out to me this last week, was it doesn't mean it's not Endor.
Right.
It's the forest moon of Endor. It could just be Endor.
Yeah.
And we have never seen Endor before. Now they've talked about it they haven't talked about it in any of the new canon that I can think of off the top of my head. But it's been mentioned in Legends and stuff like that.
Right.
So, okay, look, but if you're gonna if it's Endor and you're doing Jakku and you have a Death Star and you have the Cackle, it's Palpatine.
Oh yeah.
And now the wild speculation is he's a clone. Is he alive? Did all that kind of stuff? That makes having Palpatine be the big bad in the last movie makes the most sense to me, because Kylo is Vader, right? He's a bad guy, but he's not the big bad guy,
right?
And he's a big scary bad guy. And Snoke was always felt like a boss, but not the big boss at the end of the game.
Right. I felt like, mafia sub-boss,
Right,
local
right.
governor type.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how I always felt with Snoke. And so it makes sense that Palpatine comes back and everybody having a hissy fit online about how is he back and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, read a book.
Let's go back and read back to the Legends where he cloned himself.
Don't even have to do Legends. You can
It's
do
in the-
all
yeah,
the
right,
all
it's
the
in the
new
current stuff,
That's
too.
all the current stuff. They've been
Yeah.
I just finished Master and Commander or Master and Apprentice today. It's hard not to say Master and Commander. Also a good book. Master and Apprentice today, and they talked about some stuff in that book about the dark side working towards bringing themselves back from the dead in that. There's hints at it and stuff like that. It's not the main part of the book, but that's one of the things they talked about. So it's all laid out in front of us,
Yeah, all
just
the
not
pieces
the
are there.
way everybody I think expected it to be.
Right.
One other thing I want to talk about. We talked about, Janice and I talked about this. No Matt Smith, no Kerry Russell, no Richard E. Grant. It was just the main players. No new characters. We get one shot of Lando on the Millennium Falcon jumping to light speed. My heart. But yeah, like no new characters, no dumb, like nothing new. It was everything that we've already known. And if they want to do that as the marketing plan going forward, that none of the new stuff, none of the new characters are in the trailers, I'm totally cool with that.
Absolutely.
Just give me the.
This is rough for me because I'm one of those people who's like I don't care too much about spoilers before it comes out. I mean I figured out a good chunk of plot lines before the movie ever comes out. This one I want to genuinely be surprised. I don't want to spend, and it's hard because we do this,
Right.
but I do want to go in and I want to have something where I walk out of the theater and I go, yes. Because I'm not going to lie, I love Star Wars and whatever they wanted to do with this new trilogy, they could. But I walked out of Force Awakens going, congratulations, you did A New Hope. And even Abrams has kind of admitted to it now.
It's a little bit more than that.
It is, but it's still kind of A New Hope. Last Jedi, I kind of walked, as well as I do, because we talked about this before. Last Jedi, I walked out going, huh. And then kind of hating it. And then kind of rewatching it and going back into, okay, I've got a better appreciation for it now. And a lot of that was because I had watched Rebels, and I got into the lore of that. So a lot of it started kind of coming around and made more sense to me. And I was like, cool. So with this one, I think they can take it whichever direction they want. It's going to be the end of this series, as long as they lay that foundation. They treat the Skywalker lineage with some reverence, and the events of that period with consideration, and they set the tone for what's moving forward. Cool. And like everybody talks about, they're facing an external threat.
Right.
Is it Palpatine? I still don't think so. I think still Palpatine brings it all back together, but I think there's something else
Palpatine. Everything has to do with the outer reaches and the unknown space.
Yeah.
Everything has to deal with that. And don't be surprised if Thrawn or Chiss.
Right.
If the Chiss show up in this, I'm like.
I know. I'm the same way.
My head's gonna explode. All right, let's talk about. We got about 15 minutes before we go to break, and so I want to talk about some of the other stuff that happened at Celebration panel-wise. They had the 20th anniversary panel of Phantom Menace, which was cool but disappointing. I was hoping more of the cast would be there, but it was.
Yeah, it was kind of. Yeah.
It was just kind of.
It was like an afterthought, and I felt bad that it was kind of like that.
We got Vader Immortal, the VR game. We got the Fallen Order video game. no real gameplay on either one of those. On the VR one, they showed a little bit of gameplay.
So a little bit more now.
And then we got Galaxy's Edge, which was everything we already knew. Other than the Coke bottles, we got the Clone Wars panel, which was kind of cool. We got Mandalorian. We're gonna actually, after the break, we're going to talk about, we're going to do a deep dive on Mandalorian. Clone Wars, they showed a full-on trailer. They're doing the Jedi Mando War, which is what they've, everybody's been wanting it for a long time. They were kind of leading to that towards the end of Clone Wars, so they're going into it. That panel is so much fun to watch because that cast absolutely loves each other. Oh, yeah. And they spent the first 20 minutes just taking just shots at Dave Filoni.
Oh, yeah.
Dave spent most of that 20 minutes of that panel with the hat pulled up over his eyes and his hand over his face, and it was so. Outside of the coverage, which I already kind of covered, is there something in there you want to talk about while we have a chance? I know it's going to be the Vader Immortal.
So Vader Immortal, nothing too shocking came out. I mean, the only big news that's really come out for Vader Immortal was they talked about it being an Oculus Quest launch. It will be out for the Oculus Quest at launch, but they are going to port it later in the year to other VR systems.
Right,
I believe PSVR is one of them as well.
Yeah.
And it's a series. It's not just one. It's actually going to be a series.
The stuff they showed was season 1 is what they were showing. So
yeah, Jedi Fallen Order. I'm getting on the pre-order for it.
Yeah.
There goes my holidays. It was impressive. I'm stoked.
I still am. I am stoked, but cautiously with the idea of I want to see gameplay. But knowing that it's no microtransactions, no open world, a straightforward storytelling. They brought the guy from Gotham who's playing the Joker to be the guy in the game.
It's Cameron Monaghan.
Yeah, and so I liked what I saw. I really liked what the panel was saying, that they really have focused on making this the best game possible.
Absolutely.
It was not a let's just put out a Star Wars game. Let's put out a Star Wars game. They've been working on this for 4 years to get the whole story right and get everything correct and have it be within canon after Order 66. And the emotional stuff that they showed in the trailer, where he's having to hide in plain sight and stuff. It's just like yeah,
and there were definite Jedi Apprentice. There was the Odes of 1313, which were in there.
They have. I think they actually kind of. I was packing the garage while I was listening to the panel, so I remember them saying something about 1313 in there.
Yeah, I feel like they brought some of the elements of 1313 into Fallen Order, which makes sense.
Yeah.
You know,
I like too that they're doing that time period, because that time period, at least for right now, outside of Rebels, which leans into New Hope, after Order 66, after the Clone Wars, there's a gap there in storytelling. So you can tell that kind of story in there, and I find that really interesting, especially because I don't want to hear this complaint. Well, where was he in New Hope? What kind of, he wasn't a Jedi or a character in New Hope. There's more than there's more to the universe and the galaxy
we have established,
than Tatooine.
Right. We have established that multiple Jedi had managed to escape Order 66. Right. We've established that already. So it's good.
Right.
So we're done. We know they're out there. They're in hiding, and you would be too. Shut up. Not you per se.
No,
but
no, I know.
They're like,
I'm never going to shut up. It's me.
I know. I'm going to stand against the entire empire. Yeah, you go, boy.
Yeah, go on with that. But I like it. I feel like that game's going to be a lot more Last of Us, Tomb Raider. What's the one with Nathan Drake? Oh my God! Uncharted, where it's him on the run or having to go find things and all that that kind of thing, and trying to maybe rebuild a lightsaber. So you gotta go on a try to find a kyber crystal, which is kind of a thing in the new book. And there's And that's kind of been a big thing in a lot of the newer stuff with Catalyst and Rogue One and all that kind of stuff. And so having that would be kind of a cool tie-in.
I think so.
There was one thing I didn't put in here that I have wild speculation on, and it's called Project Omega. God damn it! There's 5
Project Illumina.
Illuminous. Project Illuminous. There's 5 authors. Claudia Gray's in there. E.K. Johnston's in there. A bunch of the Star Wars Del Rey people are working on this project. Mm-hmm. It is apparently huge, like in scope, in scale, in how they're putting it out. And they said, hey, we're working on this thing, and we can't tell you what it's about, but it's out in 2020. And now everybody's like, okay, so what is this? And some people have speculated that it is a series of books that are interconnected with each other to lay out the future of Star Wars past the Skywalker. I do that every time. I'm so sorry. Skywalker saga. And that would make sense. And then they do the setting up the universe with comics and books and stuff like that. Some people have been saying that this is how they're going to bring Old Republic in and have it be the scope of everything. But I think they're going to kind of have that covered with Benioff and Weiss and Rian Johnson all working together on their series of movies. So being one of the book lovers of the new canon stuff, I'm super excited for this, and I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. I am too. I mean, I saw that, and my brain went exactly to where yours did. I feel that it's going to be, because they've proven that they're very, very multimedia with canon.
Right. Which is part of the reason why I love it so much. I love new canon so much, is that it's all connected with each other and it's on multiple platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they've automatically come out and they've stated that they're not going to be doing any movies for a while.
Right.
So it makes sense for them to continue that lore and to start building that groundwork, because we don't know what the time jump's going to be from the end of this to whenever they pick up something new.
Right.
We know, and they could tie up it could be kind of a combination. It could be setting up the foundation for the future based off the findings of Rey in the books that also ties back into the old ways with the Old Republic.
Right.
So I see there's some fluidity there in terms of where the Star Wars universe is going post Jedi Sith, towards the gray side, back to the original teachings and Old Republic. So I agree with you. I think it's going to be the foundation of what sets up the universe moving forward, because they're working on it.
Right.
They've already had the screenplay for the Rise of Skywalker, so they know how that's going to play out.
Right.
And this is prime time because there's going to be the show whole.
And right now there's nothing out in canon that is beyond essentially where we're at right now in the story.
Correct.
So everything else is back in time or the current stuff. So like the current Star Wars line and the Poe line. Even Resistance went to like right after them destroying Hosnian Prime in Force Awakens. That's Resistance goes on from there. They announced that Anaheim in 2020 is where they're going to do with Galaxy's Edge opening and stuff like that. So I'm already working on my wife to figure out how we can go. She's already said that you and I can go.
I pretty much talked to Audrey, and Audrey was like, so we're going to Anaheim next year. like she's going to be upset. Oh, we're going to go to Disneyland on the sideway too, next to the convention?
Right. Well, that was the other thing we were talking about is as much as we would love to be able to go to Galaxy's Edge and Disneyland, since it's right next to the convention center, everybody who doesn't go to the convention is going to be at Disneyland, or the Monday after the convention, everybody's going to be trying to go. But I feel that that's where they're going to announce the Benioff and Weiss series.
I think so, too.
I think that will be the big panel that comes. I don't think next year will be as big as it was this year, but I think that will be where they announce the big thing. They'll have the trailer for the Cassian Andor Rogue One. And so all that was, and I think they'll have some more stuff kind of moving forward, but that's where I think all that big stuff. So I'm really looking forward to Anaheim, especially since it's like 5.5 hours from my front door. So I'm definitely wanting to go.
Yep.
We are going to go to break and come back and talk about the Mandalorian, and because we've been talking about all the stuff that beforehand, as we were getting ready for Celebration, and now we got more information, and so now the real speculation can.
Ooh, Mandalorian.
It looks so cool. All right, so we'll be right back after this short message. Hello, cult members. Like what you've heard on this podcast? Then please subscribe and follow us here. You can also find us on Facebook at the Pop Culture Cult. We're on Instagram at PopCultureCult1, and we're on Twitter at Pop_Cult1. We're also on YouTube at PopCultureCult and on the Stardust app under PopCultureCult. Please help us by liking, following, and subscribing to everything we have. This helps us build a bigger and better cult of pop culture. And we're back with the Rebel Files with Sean and Josh on the Pop Culture Gold.
You know what we really need the background that let's all go to the snack bar. No.
I'm totally down with that. My
Totally
ringtone on my phone right now is the Cantina song.
Yes. Because it never gets old.
Which
you
was,
hear it once and it's in your head.
Which
for
was really
life.
hard when I was listening to Celebration, and they were using that music as their kind of hold music when they were going from one panel to the next or whatever, and I kept going, my phone ran? So we're going to talk about The Mandalorian, and the reason we're spending a little bit more time with The Mandalorian is because we have been speculating wildly about what this show is going to be. A lot of it has been because we're getting set photos because it's being filmed in Los Angeles, and so we're getting a lot of stuff from that. I think a lot of it might be misdirection, but we've been talking about it a lot, and so we thought we'd do a little bit deeper dive into this panel than maybe some of the other ones, other than Rise of Skywalker, who's Rey.
Well, I think at this point we've got a little more about the Mandalorian than we do Rise of Skywalker.
Right. The panel was kind of cool. I still think they needed a moderator, but they had Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, and Kathleen Kennedy came out, and she kind of introduced them, and they talked about Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau talked about how they've actually been friends and doing stuff since the original Clone Wars. When John was at the Lucas Ranch editing Iron Man, he went in, and Dave and him hit it off right away, talking about Mandalorian stuff, and then he got John was a voice on Clone Wars and all that kind of stuff, and so that connection, and them telling that story and that connection of their love for Mandalore, which is repeated again in Rebels and all that kind of stuff. And so it was cool to having them kind of talk about it. Then they brought out Pedro Pascal, Gina Carano, and Carl Weathers to join them on the panel. And they kind of took a minute for each one of them to show like who their character is. And they started with Pedro Pascal,
who's a lot more goofy than you kind of think he is. After you watch him in Game of Thrones, you see he's a fun, but he seems kind of serious.
Right.
And then you watch the interviews with him, and he's just kind of a goofball. Yeah. And I love that. It's great.
He told a story. He got a call to go into Lucasfilm in San Francisco for something Star Wars. That's all they told him. And he walked in, and John was standing there, and the room was wrapped in artwork and storyboards and everything. And Pedro was like, what am I here to audition for? And John said, you're the Mandalorian. And like he like crumpled on the table, you know? So it was just
you could squeeze, he did right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
But they talked about how the Mandalorian is kind of there's a lot of Clint Eastwood in him, kind of the lone gunman. This is 5 years after the fall of the Empire, so it's kind of a lawless time. At least especially in the outer reaches and stuff like that. They also kind of hinted at Kurosawa movies and like that classic, Western lone gunslinger kind of tropes and stuff like that.
But that's the roots of Star Wars. in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
you know, it was very much his passion between the Kurosawa stuff, World War II films,
right.
as well as some of the westerns. You
Yeah.
know, and so it's almost bringing it right back to the roots.
Right, and John talked about how even when he was a kid, he would to get his Star Wars action figures out, and he actually wrote a treatment for this like 25 years ago when he was in college for a show like this, and a lot of the stuff that they pulled from was Kurosawa and westerns and stuff like that, but it was also the Christmas special where Boba Fett had his own, he had the gun. He's riding the dinosaur.
Riding the rifle on the dewback. To the dancer. Yeah.
And they kind of said, okay, you can't do that, but you can do a Mandalorian. So they kind of did this, and so just the idea of him, and they show him. They muted the live streams so we couldn't see the videos that were shown. They did like
I watched.
I watched the one where it was the behind the scenes video. I've seen that one.
Oh, I actually I saw a cut that somebody had filmed there of the 10 minutes of the first episode.
Of the first episode. And that one I've been avoiding. But they have been talking about it online about Werner Herzog being this ex-Imperial who's trying to come back into power, and they are stormtroopers there, and they hire the Mandalorian to go get something. Now, the baby conversation was what a lot of talk was for a while about it being the MacGuffin of the show. I still question if that's the story, but I'm okay with it. But
I'm not certain anymore.
But the idea of we thought that Werner Herzog was going to be just a voice actor. He's actually it's him in it as an Imperial. There's been no easier casting that's ever been done in Star Wars as him as an Imperial.
He's very much a Dryden Voss type.
Yes.
And that's where that 10 minutes of footage was his interaction with Werner Herzog, and the performance on both of them was great.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that it's just a voiceover from Pedro and it's somebody else in the suit. I actually want to see him in the show in the suit without a helmet on. It's really what I want, but I until we get a better understanding of what's going on with.
I believe he actually is in the suit.
I think he will be in the suit at some point, but he wasn't officially cast until 3 weeks after they started shooting. According to the internet rumors. Now, the rumors that we got them from are legitimate places, but I've been questioning it a little bit. Right. They introduced Gina Carano's character, who is a former rebel shock trooper named Cara Dune, and she's trying to figure out how to reintegrate into this world of not having a battle or a fight to fight in, and her emotional disconnect with everybody because of that. And she's kind of a loner. She's trying to find her place, and I envision that she's going to be hired as a part of the crew for the Mandalorian to go get whatever the MacGuffin is. And Gina was amazing in the panel. She was like, I've been seeing everybody talk online about what they think my character is, and some of you are close and some of you are wildly
way out there
wrong and stuff. But do you like this idea of them bringing in a rebel shock trooper?
Yeah, I think she's going to be very much in that vein of the Baze Malbus type, because we don't really hear a lot about rebel shock troopers. Rebels, as far as the General Guard, we know they had them, but you don't see a lot of them in the film and everything else. And then when you got Rogue One, you saw Baze. Baze was very much he's heavy armor, heavy ammo. I think she's going to be kind of in that line, kind of that style. It asks kind of the questions. What happens to the rebellion when they've won?
Yeah.
We know what the Empire's kind of gone off and done, trying to reform and do what they can.
Right.
But,
and especially for places in the Outer Rim that don't have the same representation in the Senate or the new Senate, and they're just people are just scrambling to find food and water and transportation to a better position or whatever. And so that idea, if they're going to lean into that, I very much feel this is going to be a very adult kind of show.
Yeah,
and leaning away maybe from the kids stuff. And
everything that I saw with all the video footage and everything I've had, they're taking it back to, they always talked about Star Wars and the original trilogy being the dirty future. And, with the prequel trilogy, we got the high polished Tide of the Republic.
Right.
And with the new trilogy, we've gotten a little bit of both to a degree. You see some of the glitz in the side. With
Canto Bite. And,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So with this one, they've gone back to that really dirty, gritty Western vibe.
Right.
And just based on the subject matter from what I've seen on it, what they showed, it's going to be a gritty Star Wars series.
Yeah, I'm super excited, especially for Gina Carano, because I really like her. She's a really nice, awesome person, and she's kind of got thrown into some stuff before I think she was really ready and stuff. And so, and then they talked about Carl Weathers playing Grief Karga. He is the head of a guild of bounty hunters, and that's all you need to know. Like Carl Weathers is the head of a guild of bounty hunters. Sure, Apollo Creed.
He doles out the work. Yep.
And I'm sure he's got some stuff, because they talked about later on that Gina and Carl Weathers both did a ton of their own stunts, and John would have to leave to go work on Lion King for a couple hours, and luckily it's all on the same lot essentially. And he'd come back over, and Gina's stunt double is like sitting in the chair in the corner, because Gina's doing all the stunt stuff.
Right.
And Carl Weathers was doing a lot of the same stuff too, which I love when actors do that, because it gives another level of realty to it. Realty. I've been dealing with houses. The main characters from Mandalorian's ship is called the Razor Crest. They actually did an old school model.
Yep.
They ILM's model maker John Goodston built the actual old school techniques, the way they would have done New Hope and Return of the Jedi and stuff like that. And then John Knoll, on his weekends, built a new harness for the camera, hand forged all the stuff so the camera could turn with the ship, and they practically filmed all of it in his garage.
Yeah, it was like a specialized gimbal almost.
Yeah, and so that's just awesome that they're doing special effects, and they're gonna do a lot of special effects in this, and there's gonna be a lot of CGI stuff that they're doing, because they're gonna have a whole bunch of aliens and pretty much it's all in one location, but aliens and spaceships and all that kind of stuff, whatever. But they have tables and ladders and chairs. But they're going back to the kind of the old school way of filmmaking for Star Wars.
Yeah, for me, it just. The whole work of it has been a very return to the roots type of episode. And I mean, let's get into the Razor Crest. Not flashy.
No.
Not a flashy ship.
No, and
it's very subdued.
It's actually, I think it's even less, the Millennium Falcon is not flashy, but it is iconic shaped. And
it's funny, because when you look at the Razor Crest and you look at the mock-up of it, it's very much kind of like a standard cargo transport.
Yeah.
He could just slip in anywhere in cargo lanes and get away with it, which logical. If he's a bounty hunter, he wants to be able to kind of blend in.
Slave One was flashy.
Slave One was flashy by comparison.
Right.
Let's be frank.
Right. I like too that they actually made the practical thing, and then Dave Filoni is like, we made a practical model so I could have something for my desk. No, you didn't, John. No, you didn't, Dave.
But if you got to have a reason for it, that's a good
right. Favreau did say that we are going to get new planets and new aliens and completely unique characters that feel like Star Wars, but they're going to be new to us. We're going to have some familiar tropes and things and stuff like that, but we are going to get a bunch of new stuff, which I think I think what a lot of people are actually looking for. They did a montage clip, and we got Kowakian. English is hard. Monkey lizard being roasted on a spit.
And for those of you who didn't see it and don't know what the Kowakian monkey is, the Kowakian monkey was the goofy little high-pitched laughing sucker that sat next to Jabba the Hutt.
And I can't remember his name right now. It's making me crazy. I'm sure somebody
It'll
will
come
make
to me
it.
by the end of this.
Yeah,
you know?
we'll throw it in there. Please be nice in the comments. We are getting an IG unit droid bounty hunter.
Yep.
But they made a point of saying it's not IG-88.
So I got excited by that announcement, actually.
Right.
And the reason I got excited by that announcement was because if it's not specifically IG-88, does that mean that at some point, and this is my old canon coming back in, but does that mean at some point they're keeping the story of Shadows of the Empire actually somewhat true? Because Shadows of the Empire took place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi,
Right.
and that's where you had everybody looking for Han, and you had an interaction with Boba Fett and IG-88 and all
Right,
that. And
right.
I think, if I remember correctly, because it's been forever, IG-88 got waxed in that. So I'm like, okay, well, if they're not bringing in IG-88, then maybe they're kind of keeping some of that true in case they want a backstory.
It's IG-106.
Yeah, it's one of the IG series.
Yeah. So I thought that it was kind of a cool, like they made a point of saying it's not IG-88, but it is an IG model, so it's gonna have a lot of the familiarity to
Right.
it that you're gonna like. I almost had the name, but the idea that they're roasting the monkey. Lizard.
Oh yeah,
the spigot is just awesome. But the
Salacious Crumb.
Salacious Crumb.
Crumb,
There you
that
go,
was it.
Salacious Crumb. We
coming
worked it out. And then the last thing that they kind of talked about in the panel, they talked about a bunch of different things. They did some questions and whatever. But the thing that I was really excited about was they got to a scene and they realized they needed more stormtroopers than what they actually had.
Yep.
And Dave's like, well, I know some stormtroopers, and called up the LA branch of the 501st, and like 30 of them showed up in screen accurate stormtrooper outfits from right after Return of the Jedi, and they just thought they were showing up for, some publicity thing for Star Wars or whatever, and they spent a day marching in together. What's the word I'm looking for? In formation, marching in formation like you would have and everything, and they found out that they're going to be in the Mandalorian. So,
So I remember my brother talking to me a little bit about this, because my brother's actually in the LA chapter of the 501st,
right.
and except he doesn't do Stormtrooper, he's actually a Palpatine, and he's an officer,
right,
character in the 501st. But I remember he couldn't give me like a massive amount of details, but he'd mentioned to me that the 501st had got brought in to do some filming, and a lot of the guys that he hangs out with were stupid stoked.
Oh yeah,
just giddy as kids, but they were like, we can't really talk about it, but the 501st is something cool this weekend,
The picture of everybody in their stormtrooper outfits with Filoni and John and the cast all together was a really cool, like, I had wondered if they were going to do some of the Empire stuff in this.
Yep.
And with the Werner Herzog ex-Imperial, and then they bring in the 501st, and like, so yes, you're going to get that overlaying thing. You're not going to get, laser swords and Jedi and all that kind of jazz and stuff like that. But there will be references to it. It has to be references to it.
Oh, absolutely.
The number one reason that, in Imperial eyes, the number one reason that the Death Star 2 got blown up was because of Luke Skywalker. Again. And so they're...
Even though he actually had nothing to do with it.
He was busy getting his ass kicked.
Yes.
But,
that was all Wedge, baby. Wedge, Lando, and you know. Like that. And it was a bigger Death Star.
The Aftermath books, one of the main characters is flying one of the other X-Wings into the center of Death Star 2. So I'm wondering if they'll not introduce her character, but mention her by name, and I cannot remember her name off the top of my head. It's Snap's mom.
Oh.
Wexley's
mom?
I cannot remember her name. Kira. It's not Kira. That's Amelia Clark. But it would be cool if they kind of reference that kind of stuff, or Admiral Sloan, or kind of that kind of stuff that we know for a fact that exists in canon, but necessarily isn't. We're not too Force Awakens stuff yet.
Mandalorian starts what this fall?
So
Disney
so
Plus.
it's November 12th, and
Okay,
The Mandalorian is the first.
So before the movie comes out.
Yes.
So I'm wondering.
And there's 10 episodes, and they're doing week by week, so it won't quite be done by the time we get to Force
No, but it
Awakens.
leaves us enough time that with 5 years after Return of the Jedi, I'm wondering if we get references to the wreckage of the Death Star at some point, with the Imperials talking about trolling through the remnants of the Death Star, something that segs up that little bit of a nudge,
right, just
into the
kinda
movie.
like a wink and a nod, and
Exactly,
like kind of thing. What was I watching? No, it was the Master and Apprentice book. They every once in a while they would mention something, and you're like, that's like why. It's not really a spoiler. Why Obi-Wan hates flying so much? They kind of not explain it, but they kind of make reference to it in the book, and and you get references to Dooku and kind of his thought process and him, so it's like winks and nods and stuff like that goes on. So it'd be really cool if they did that. They do that within the Marvel universe, and that's one of the things I really like about the Marvel universe. But let's talk about what we expect out of this show. Do we expect it to be the gunslinger, just cool story arc, or are we just thinking it's going to be something more to it? Because I know that they're probably already thinking about season 2.
They're I think it already got renewed.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So they're gonna try. I really think they're gonna try to flesh out that period. Just obviously they're gonna try to flesh out the period. It's not gonna be just a sole one-off. They've got too much real estate invested,
right,
in this type of a character and these locations, and just in the general time frame of the stories. Because like you hit it, this is 5 years after the rebellion. This goes up through like aftermath and all that type of stuff up in there. So there's tons of stuff that actually exists out there that bounces around this time period between games and things of that nature. So they're going to explore it. I think we're going to see a lot of resistance setups, or at least alluded to.
I'm thinking out loud. Battlefront 2, Iden Versio, and all of that happens. I mean, they're on Endor, Forest Moon of Endor. I'm going to start saying I have to say it that way. And they watch the Death Star explode, and then they move forward from that story.
And in time.
And some of that story towards the end could be 5 years out.
Could be. Well, she's aged by the end of that.
Right.
So you have to kind of look at that going, okay, are we going to hear Inferno Squad? Are we going to hear references to it?
Right.
That they're making these things canon, so there's going to have to be what I call the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing, like you talk about the mediums. There's going to be those nudges of things that affect it, and honestly, we'll probably see things that they touched on in Battlefront 2, or things they've touched on in Aftermath that we're going to either see the foundation, the groundwork of in this, or elements of it that expand. We're going to see that connective tissue.
Right.
There's no's or buts, but I think at the core element, I mean, let's face it, you've got. I hate to use this reference because one of the characters is in this series, Giancarlo Esposito. This is going to be the Breaking Bad of Star Wars. This is
I thought that too.
Just watching it, just when they cast him,
in
the series, and when they cast Werner in the series,
right.
when they cast Gina in the series,
right.
you know the tone that they're going with is going to be one of some edgy ass.
Right.
Expletive deleted. But that's the way they're going to go. And I think we're going to have a very, very driven series that is going to kind of come back to that audience and say, you've had your family fun.
Right.
But there's a much darker side to this universe that a lot of people have they've seen bits of.
Right.
That we really saw in Rogue One. I think it's going to be in that tone.
That tone. Yeah. No. And kind of the end of Rebels.
Right, exactly.
Like towards the last maybe 10 episodes of Rebels is really, I won't say adult, but it's really,
it was dark.
Adult. It's very grown
oriented.
Like a grown person, like you grew up in the show, and by the time we get done with the show, he was a young man, and
Well, if you think about the subject matter there and the time frames are more catered to adults because we grew up with that time frame. So if you think about it, it makes more sense that if you're going to make an adult-oriented Star Wars show, that you would base it around a time frame that we're going to be drawn to as adults.
Right.
So dude. I think it's going to be a lot darker. I don't think we're going to get hit like necessarily R-rated, but we're going to be in the Rogue One.
Darkness, and I'm really looking forward to the darkness that's going to be Cassian and the spies stuff that we're going to get. That's a whole other conversation for another time. That is the Rebel Files for this week, episode 1 for the podcast feed. Da-da-da-da.
That's right. You don't have to look at me. You just get to hear my voice. And Sean's. He sounds better than I do.
I don't know about that. I got this high-pitched squeal thing.
Dad, is that you? Sorry.
So what we ask from you guys is to rate, like us, comment, subscribe to whatever channel that you are watching or listening us to, whether that be on the podcast form or the video form on YouTube. Follow us on all our social media stuff, which all that description, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that kind of stuff is in the description below. But what we're going to ask from you guys every time from here on out, if you have a Star Wars question and you want to hear our opinion or wild speculation or whatever, if you have a question for us, please send us a question either via the comment section in your podcast or in the comments of the YouTube video or on Facebook, Twitter, whatever that thing, hashtag PopCultureCult, and we will find it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always watching the feeds. We always see the commentary come in. So absolutely feel free to reach out, engage. If there's one of those weird abstract areas that, you want us to explore, we're totally down to talk about it, So go ahead and just drop us a line. We're friendly. We respond to people.
He's friendly. I'm an asshole. And the last thing that we want to talk about is Patreon. If you can, please help us out on Patreon. You can get in for $1 a month. $1. And we talked about it on the show last night. We are getting a new logo for the main show. Once we build up again, we're going to do a new logo for the Rebel Files. We've got new music that we're using. So we are working on all that stuff. So please help us out on Patreon. Patreon.com/PopCultureCult. $1.
You got that.
And you can do that. It's in the couch right now. The one you're sitting in. It's probably underneath the seat or your truck outside. I know it is.
Got it.
And until next time, cult members, I'm one with the Force.
And the Force is with us.